The hearing will come to order. The Oversight Committee exists to secure two fundamental principles. First, Americans have a right to know that the money Washington takes from them is well spent. And second, Americans deserve an efficient, effective government that works for them. Our duty on the Oversight and Government Reform Committee is to protect these rights. Our solemn responsibility is to hold government accountable to taxpayers, because taxpayers have a right to know what they get from their government. Our obligation is to work tirelessly with citizen watchdogs and whistleblowers to deliver the facts to the American people and bring genuine reform to the federal bureaucracy. On September 11, 2012, 4 Americans were murdered by terrorists. It was the 11th anniversary of the 9/11 terrorist attacks on New York and Washington. Recognizing that the witnesses before us are actual experts on what really happened before, during, and after the Benghazi attacks, I'm not going to recount those events or decisions. These witnesses deserve to be heard on the Benghazi attacks, the flaws in the Accountability Review Board's methodology, process, and conclusion. Before I introduce these witnesses and explain some of our efforts to learn more about what happened in Benghazi, can we have those doors closed, please? I want to take a moment to reflect on and to recognize the brave Americans who lost their lives in that attack that day. I also want to note that there are friends and immediate family of those killed or injured that are with us here today. J. Christopher Stevens, U.S. Ambassador to Libya. Sean Patrick Smith, Information Management Specialist. Tyrone Woods, Security Specialist and former Navy SEAL. Glenn Doherty, Security Specialist and former Navy SEAL. Our goal in this investigation is to get answers, because their families deserve answers. They were promised answers at the highest level when their bodies came home. The President was there, the Vice President was there, the Secretary of Defense was there, the Secretary of State was there. We want to make certain those promises are kept on behalf of those individuals. We also want to make certain that our government learns the proper lessons from this tragedy, so it never happens again, and so that the right people are held accountable. I want those watching this proceeding to know that we've made extensive efforts to engage the administration and to see and hear their facts. The administration, however, has not been cooperative, and unfortunately, our minority has mostly sat silent as we've made these requests. Some examples. On February 22nd, this committee wrote to Ambassador Pickering and Admiral Mullen, who, as required by law, were appointed by Secretary Clinton and co-chaired the Accountability Review Board investigation. We asked them to testify about their investigations and findings. They refused, and our minority said nothing. When we asked Ambassador Pickering and Admiral Mullen to speak with us and our committee informally, they again refused, and again there was silence by the minority. When 5 House committee chairmen wrote the White House and requested relevant documents about the Benghazi attacks, we were refused. The committee's minority did not join in a similar call for transparency, and I wish they had. On April 29th, this committee asked the State Department to make 9 current and former officials with relevant information available for this hearing or a separate transcribed interview. The State Department did not even respond. and to date, the minority has not made a similar request. Mr. Cummings, I would like nothing more than to have you work with me on this investigation. Because we've worked on other areas together, I still hold out hope that one day you will stand with me as this administration doesn't cooperate, when they ignore our inquiries. And when that day comes, together, we will be far more effective. And now for our witnesses, or should I say our whistleblowers. Mr. Mark Thompson is the Acting Deputy Assistant Secretary in the State's Department of Bureau of Counterterrorism. Welcome. Mr. Gregory Hicks is a 22-year veteran Foreign Service officer and the former Deputy Chief of Mission for the U.S. Embassy in Libya. After Ambassador Stevens was murdered, Mr. Hicks became the Acting Chief of Mission, or as they say, the Charge d'Affaires. He was, in fact, in Libya, its highest-ranking officer, if you will, America's representative in Libya. Mr. Eric Nordstrom is the former regional security officer in Libya, and perhaps the foremost and most knowledgeable person about security requests that were made and denied to the U.S. diplomatic mission in Libya and in Benghazi, ultimately in Benghazi. Mr. Cummings, we will have from time to time our disagreements, but I know that for all the members of this committee, we understand that these disagreements must be kept on this side of the dais. These brave witnesses deserve this committee's call to testify. These brave whistleblowers are in fact what makes this committee's work work. We are the committee that oversees and that led for new whistleblower protection signed by this president. The public has a right to hear their accounts, and we, more than any other committee in the Congress, must respect whistleblowers and work on a bipartisan basis always to protect them. With that, I recognize the ranking member for his opening statement.
Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for calling this hearing, and I want to be clear, and I've said it over and over again. There's no member of this Congress, be they Republican or Democrat, who fails to uphold the right of whistleblowers to come forward. And I think it's sad when that accusation is made against any member of this Congress. And so, to the hearing. I too, and all of our members, both Republicans and Democrats, were tremendously saddened by the deaths of J. Christopher Stevens, Sean Patrick Smith, Tyrone Woods, and Glenn Doherty. They were servants of the public. They, like our whistleblowers, were people who dedicated their lives to making a difference, and they saw the world as bigger than just them. They were the ones that were often unseen, unnoticed, unappreciated, and unapplauded. We've actually seen some of that with regard to public employees in this Congress. But yet and still, day after day, they went out there and they did their jobs. And on behalf of this Congress and a grateful nation, I say thank you. I am glad the whistleblowers are here. And I will do every single thing in my power to protect the whistleblowers. As a matter of fact, just on May 7, 2013, I sent a letter to John Kerry, and I said in that letter that despite the highly partisan nature of the committee's actions, it nevertheless remains very important, and this is a quote, to me personally to make clear to all government agencies and employees who choose to come forward to Congress that their interests will be protected. For these reasons, I request that the department remind its employees of their rights with respect to providing information to Congress, as well as their responsibilities not to retaliate against individuals who exercise those rights. The department may already do this as a matter of course, in which case I ask that you provide an update on the status of those efforts. Whistleblowers are important. They are very important. One of the things that I've said in this meeting room over and over again is that we must be effective and efficient. And one of the major roles of this committee is to make sure that government works properly. And so, to all of our witnesses, thank you. Mr. Hicks, I would like to start by expressing my gratitude for your service and my condolences for your loss. I can only imagine what you went through on the night of the attacks. If I had been in your place, hearing Ambassador Stevens' voice on the phone and wanting to do everything possible to help him, I would have had the same questions you had. Where's the military? Where are the special forces? Where are the fighter jets to rescue my colleagues? These are legitimate questions, and I wanted to know the answers myself. For example, last week, there was a widely publicized news report that a team in Europe called the Commanders in Extremis Force could have gotten to Benghazi before the second attack. When I heard this claim, I wrote to the Secretary of Defense immediately. Yesterday, I received an official response. It says this press report was wrong. The team was too far away, and the logistical requirements were too great. Others have suggested that F-16s stationed at Aviano Air Force Base in Italy could have gotten there in time. But according to General Martin Dempsey, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who testified before the Senate in February, he said they could not. And this is our highest ranking military member. The fact is that our nation's top military commanders have already testified repeatedly that they did everything in their power to mobilize and deploy assets as soon as possible, and every independent and bipartisan review has confirmed this fact. We have the best military in the world, but even with all of their technological advances, they could not get there in time. Mr. Hicks, I know these answers provide no comfort to you or the families of the victims, but this is the testimony Congress has received, and I have seen nothing to make me question the truthfulness of our nation's military commanders. Our committee has a fundamental obligation to conduct responsible oversight, and that includes carefully examining the information that you and others provide. But we also have a duty to thoroughly investigate these claims before we make public accusations. In contrast, what we have seen over the past 2 weeks is a full-scale media campaign that is not designed to investigate what happened in a responsible and bipartisan way, but rather a launch of unfounded accusations to smear public officials. Let me be clear. I am not questioning the motives of our witnesses. I am questioning the motives of those who want to use their statements for political purposes. Chairman Issa has accused the administration of intentionally withholding military assets, which could have helped save lives on the night of the attacks. I say for political reasons. Of all the irresponsible allegations leveled over the past 2 weeks, this is the most troubling. And based on what our military commanders have told us, this allegation is simply untrue. Chairman Issa suggested that 4 military personnel were told to stay in Tripoli rather than board a plane in Benghazi at 6 a.m. the morning after the attack, supposedly because of the administration's political desire not to have a presence in Benghazi. There's no evidence to support this. As Mr. Hicks told the committee, one plane had already left for Benghazi at 1:15 a.m. that night, and it included a 7-person security team with 2 military personnel. The decision the next morning to keep 4 military personnel in place in Tripoli was not made by the White House or the State Department, but by the military chain of command. There are other allegations. Chairman Issa went on national TV and accused Secretary Clinton of lying to Congress. He says she personally signed the State Department cable authorizing security reductions. We have now seen this cable, and she did not sign it. Her name is printed at the bottom, just like tens of thousands of cables sent every year from the department. As I close, the Washington Post fact checker called this accusation a whopper, that's their word, and gave it 4 Pinocchios. Chairman Issa attacked Ambassador Susan Rice for statements she made on Sunday talk shows, claiming the administration, quote, deliberately misled the American people. The claim has been directly contradicted by our nation's top intelligence official, General James Clapper. He has already testified before the Senate that these attacks against Ms. Rice were, quote, unfair, end of quote, because, quote, she was going on what we had given her, and that was our collective best judgment at the time. There have also been allegations that the Accountability Review Board, led by Ambassador Thomas Pickering and Admiral Mike Mullen, failed to examine the role of Ambassador Patrick Kennedy. This accusation is, again, inaccurate according to the board. And so, Mr. Chairman, if this committee is going to suggest that General Dempsey, General Clapper, and all are all involved in a conspiracy of withholding military assets and then covering it up, and if this committee is going to accuse Ambassador Pickering and Admiral Mullen of failing to fully investigate these attacks, the least we can do is have them invited to this hearing today or in a future hearing. And according to our conversation yesterday with regard to Admiral Pickering and Mullen, you have said that you plan to bring them in the future, and I appreciate that. Last but not least, I want to make it very clear to our witnesses. I respect the witnesses who are here today to offer their testimony. As a lawyer and an officer of the court, I have tremendous respect for evidence. But today's hearing is not the full story. I hope we will eventually hear our military, our intelligence, and our diplomatic officials. Then I hope we can turn to the real work, as the chairman has said, of this committee, which is ensuring that the department implements the recommendations to improve the security of our diplomatic officials serving overseas, those who are so often unseen, unnoticed, unappreciated, and unapplauded. With that, I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. Fortunately, today, I'm not the witness. I'd now like to invite our witnesses. First, Mr. Mark Thompson, a 20-year career United States Marine, who 2 years before his retirement from the Marine Corps was assigned to the State Department, where he brought his experience in serving in all 4 Marine divisions and in numerous amphibious forces to the State Department. For 17 years, he has used that military experience and his accumulated knowledge of counterterrorism well. He has served and led teams in Baghdad, Iraq, in Latin America, in Southeast Asia, and in Africa. When in 1996 he joined the State Department as a U.S. Marine, he was brought there because of what he knew and what they needed to know. In 1998, as he retired from the Marine Corps, he was transitioned at their request into civil service and was then assigned to what was then the Office of the Coordinator of Counterterrorism, its successor he serves and runs today. In 2004, he served with the Coalition Provision Authority, in other words, with our forces in Baghdad. In 2006, he assumed his current position, where he advises senior leadership on operational counterterrorism matters and ensures the United States can rapidly respond to global terrorism crisis. That is his job. In addition to his responsibilities, he has led the NSC's Direct Foreign Emergency Support Team, or FES team, in support of U.S. Chiefs of Mission in response to terrorism events, including His expertise was used in that capacity when he was deployed in response to the 1998 East African bombings of our two embassies, the 2000 bombing of the USS Cole, and hostage and recovery efforts in Latin America, Southeast Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. Welcome. Mr. Gregory Hicks, in more than 22 years in the Foreign Service, Mr. Hicks has served notably in Libya, but also in Afghanistan, in Bahrain, where we first met, in Yemen, in Syria, where we met again, and in Gambia. Prior to his assignment in Libya, handpicked to be the Deputy Chief of Mission by the now deceased Ambassador Chris Stevens, he also served 4 tours here in Washington. He was the Deputy Director of the Office of Investment Affairs, Special Assistant to the Undersecretary for Economic, Energy, and Agricultural Affairs, Trade Policy Negotiator for the Office of United States Trade Representative, and Country Officer for Vietnam, Oman, and Yemen. Mr. Hicks played key roles in a number of important historic events with this country and the State Department. Vietnam's accession to the World Trade Organization, the U.S.-Bahrain Free Trade Agreement, the U.S.-Vietnam Bilateral Trade Agreement, and the renegotiation of U.S. forces based in Oman. Mr. Hicks is the recipient of 5 meritorious service increases, 3 individual superior honor awards, 3 individual meritorious honor awards, and numerous group awards for his service. Thank you. Mr. Nordstrom, in his 15 years at the State Department, he has served in Washington, D.C., in Honduras, in Ethiopia, in India, and most recently, he was the Regional Security Officer for the U.S. mission to Libya, based out of Tripoli. In that capacity, as RSO in Tripoli from September 2011 to July of 2012, he was the principal security officer advising both Ambassador Kretz and Ambassador Stevens on security and law enforcement matters. Prior to joining the Department of State, Mr. Nordstrom also served in federal law enforcement at the Department of Treasury. Welcome to all 3 of you. Would you please rise, as is pursuant to our rules, and take the oath? Do you solemnly swear, or please raise your right hands. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please have a seat. Let the record reflect all witnesses answered in the affirmative. Now, I'm going to note that I've read your opening statements, and they're unusually short. So I'm not worried about the 5 minutes, but we are here to hear from you. So take the time you need to tell your story. We will listen, and the ordinary time is 5 minutes. You take a little less, you take a little more. This hearing is about hearing from you on your experience. Mr. Thompson.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, members of the committee.
And please pull your microphone a little closer. Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity to tell a story. As the chairman indicated, I came to the department 16 and a half years ago as a Marine, transitioned, and have been on the activities that he has already described. The night that I was involved in this incident, I was at my desk at the end of the day when the first reports came in that indicated that we had an attack going on at our diplomatic facility in Benghazi. In that facility, we knew we had our ambassador and we had his security personnel. Later, when I heard that the situation had evolved to them going to a safe haven, and then the fact that we could not find the ambassador, I alerted my leadership indicating that we needed to go forward and consider the deployment of the Foreign Emergency Support Team. That particular team is an interagency team. It's been represented as something that the State Department deploys. It does not. The Deputies Committee of the National Security Council deploys that organization. But I wanted that considered. I notified the White House of my idea. They indicated that meetings had already taken place that evening that had taken FEST out of the menu of options. I called the office within the State Department that had been represented there, asking them why it had been taken off the table, and was told that it was not the right time and it was not the team that needed to go right then. Let me explain the team a little more. It is comprised of the leadership from my office. It is comprised of professionals from Special Operations Command, from Diplomatic Security, from the intelligence community, from FBI. It is a holistic, comprehensive organization that is designed to go forward to embassies, just as we did, as indicated in 1998 in East Africa, as we've done in the other places indicated, USS Cole and other hostage situations. It is designed to be the glue and the connective tissue that gets all the options on the table for the decision makers. Decision makers in my line of work are the Chief of Mission and the authorities back here in Washington that make the decisions of where we send people into harm's way. It doesn't mean it has a irreversibility to it. The other thing that I pointed out was that with the tyranny of distance, at least 8 or 9 hours to get to the middle of the Mediterranean, we needed to act now and not wait. There's sometimes the hesitancy to not deploy because we don't know what's going on. One definition of a crisis is you don't know what's going to happen in 2 hours. So you need to help develop that situation early. We have a robust comms suite on the airplane that we are transported on. It is ably flown by my SOCOM colleagues. It is on alert to do just this mission, and it's designed to carry a comprehensive team to a conflict or a crisis and to help the ambassador and work for the ambassador and or the chief of mission to handle that crisis and to make sure he or she has the best information possible to make decisions and to make recommendations back to Washington. And those same representatives make their views known back to their parent organizations, so that when we do have deputies committees and principal committees meetings at the White House, we have a situation in which everyone is using the most up-to-date information, and so that we can figure out what we have to do security-wise, what we have to do intelligence-wise, what we have to do with the military, what we have to do diplomatic-wise, what we have to do on the public affairs front. That works for the chief of mission, and I can't emphasize that enough. We are not there to subsume any activities. The experts on the team know that the real experts are in the embassy, and they work for the chief of mission to do that. My time is drawing to a close. I'll end there and await your questions.
Thank you. Mr. Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We really will have to, you're pretty soft spoke and get it a little closer. And
Try to get this up here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ranking Member. Thank you, members of the committee. I am a career public servant. Until the aftermath of Benghazi, I loved every day of my job. In my 21 years of government service prior to Tripoli, I earned a reputation for being an innovative policymaker who got the job done. I was promoted quickly and received numerous awards. People who worked for me rated my leadership and management skills highly. I have 2 master's degrees from the University of Michigan in applied economics and modern Near Eastern and North African studies. I have served my country extensively in the Mideast Besides Libya, I served in Afghanistan, Bahrain, Yemen, Syria, and the Gambia. I speak fluent Arabic. In Bahrain, my Shia opposition contacts gave me advance warning of impending attacks on our embassy and anti-American demonstrations, allowing us to prepare and avoid injuries to staff. I learned that knowledge of local conditions and strong connections with the local population are as important as the strength and height of walls. One reason I am here is because I have pledged to the Foreign Service as part of my campaign to be State Vice President of the American Foreign Service Association that none of us should ever again experience what we went through in Tripoli and Benghazi on 9/11/2012. After I arrived in Tripoli as Deputy Chief of Mission on July 31st, 2012, I fast became known as the Ambassador's Bulldog because of my decisive management style. In the days immediately after the Benghazi attack, the President and Secretary of State praised my performance over the telephone. President Obama wrote Libyan President Magariaf expressing confidence in my abilities. Deputy Secretary Burns and General Ham told me how much they appreciated how I handled the night of the assault and its aftermath. I received written notes of commendation from Undersecretary Wendy Sherman and from Executive Secretary Stephen Mull. Incoming Chargé Larry Pope told me personally that my performance was near heroic. In February 1991, I swore an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States. I'm here today to honor that oath. I look forward to answering your questions fully and truthfully. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I understand that some of those commendations and letters are in your opening statement, and for all the witnesses, all extraneous material or other insertions will be placed in the record on your behalf. Mr. Nordstrom.
Good morning, Chairman Issa, Ranking Member Cummings, and other distinguished members of the committee. For the benefit of the new committee members, my name is Eric Nordstrom, and I currently serve as the Supervisory Special Agent with the U.S. Department of State's Bureau of Diplomatic Security. Since September 2012, I have been enrolled in long-term language training in preparation for my next assignment. As Chairman Issa noted, I've served in federal law enforcement since January 1996, first as a customs inspector before joining the U.S. Department of State. I've served in domestic and overseas postings, including Washington, D.C., Honduras, Ethiopia, India, and most recently, the Regional Security Officer at the U.S. Embassy in Tripoli. All of those assignments have been assignments in which I've faced the threat of criminal or terrorist attacks. I held the last position as RSO from September 21st, 2011 until July 26, 2012. As the Regional Security Officer, or RSO, at the U.S. Embassy in Tripoli, I served as the Principal Security Advisor to U.S. Ambassadors Eugene Kretz and Chris Stevens on security and law enforcement matters. I want to thank the committee again for the opportunity to appear, provide further testimony in support of your inquiry into the tragic events of September 11th, 2012. I would also like to thank the committee for your continued efforts in investigating all the details and all the decisions related to the attack on our diplomatic facility. Specifically, the committee's labors to uncover what happened prior, during, and after the attack matter. It matters to me personally, and it matters to my colleagues to my colleagues at the Department of State. It matters to the American public for whom we serve. And most importantly, excuse me, it matters to the friends and family of Ambassador Stevens, Sean Smith, Glenn Doherty, and Tyrone Woods, who were murdered on September 11th, 2012. In addition to my testimony before this committee in October 2012, I also met with the FBI, Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, the Department's Accountability Review Board, and I've discussed my experiences in Libya with all of them. I'm proud of the work that our team accomplished in Libya under extraordinarily difficult circumstances. The protection of our nation's diplomats, our embassies and consulates, and the work produced there is deserving of the time that this committee, other congressional committees, and the Accountability Review Board, and no doubt future review efforts, will invest in making sure that we get this process right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee for the opportunity to appear before you today. I stand ready to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. I'll now recognize myself for a quick round of questioning.